I think we can begin. Wonderful. Is everyone present? Can we begin the meeting? Yes, I think we can begin the session. Thank you very much, Nathan. Good evening, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I have the privilege of calling this online meeting of the Civil Dimension of Security to order as part of our annual NPA session. Given the current pandemic, just wanted to make sure that I can be heard because I hear some background noise. Given the current pandemic, unfortunately, we were not able to meet in person in Athens as had been initially planned. Nevertheless, it is essential for us to continue to be able to debate these important topics which are relevant for our committee, even if we must do so online. I would like to welcome all of the members of the committee, associate members, as well as any new colleagues who may be attending this meeting for the first time. Our meeting will take place in two parts. Firstly, today, we will discuss two excellent draft reports, and then tomorrow, we will adopt two draft reports and we'll also discuss our committee's resolution entitled Furthering the Implementation of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 and the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. That resolution will be presented by our General Rapporteur, Ulla Schmidt. Interruption? You can let me know when I can resume, says the speaker. Are there any technical problems? Is everything okay? Everything is all right? Yes, everything appears to be working perfectly well. I think it can continue. Okay. I was told to stop speaking, says the speaker, because there was some sort of test. In any case, members can now find the table of the amendments, which will be discussed tomorrow. You can find that on the Kudo platform by clicking on the Documents tab. Those amendments are also available on the session's SharePoint website. I now give the floor to our committee director, Nathan Grison, for some technical remarks. You have the floor, Nathan. Thank you, and I will switch to English. And just one remark. I think I understand now where the background noise is coming from. Our meeting is taking place at the same time as the political committee, and I'm therefore hearing the political committee at the same time. I'd closed the tab, so I'm somewhat surprised to hear both meetings, but in any case, I hope I'm the only one in that situation.
I'd just like to make a few announcements very quickly. As you rightly pointed out, Madam Chair, all documents which will be discussed during the meeting can be found under Documents on the right side of your screen if you click on the little icon. Please note in particular that the list of amendments for the draft resolution, which we'll discuss tomorrow, can be found there as well. As you know, the deadline for amendments was yesterday at 3 o'clock, so it is now too late to offer amendments. Please note that your participation in votes during the CDS meetings is based on information provided to the NATO PA staff by your Secretary of Delegation. If you are eligible to vote in this meeting, they will have informed you of the email address you needed to log in with. If you have not logged in with the correct email address, you must log out and then log back in with the correct email address. In order to test this, we will have an opportunity to vote, or you will have an opportunity to vote on the agenda and on the summaries of previous meetings early on in this meeting, as a matter of fact, in the next minutes. If you face any difficulties at this point, or if you face, as a matter of fact, any technical difficulties during the meeting, please write in the operator chat on the right side of your screen, and NATO PA staff will assist you to the best of their abilities. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, cher Nathan.
Thank you very much, Nathan, for that Very useful information. We now move to the adoption of our draft agenda for today's and tomorrow's meeting. Are there any comments on the proposed agenda, be it on today's portion or any other portion of the agenda? I don't see any requests for the floor. Could I ask the NPA staff now to please start the vote? Could you please begin the vote for approving the agenda? Yes, the voting should now be available. It's on the right side of your screen. There's a polls button, which you can click on to vote. So if you click on the poll button, you can then vote. Has everyone voted? We will allow 1 minute to members in order to be able to vote. If you have any technical problems with the vote, please send us a message. You can write to the operators by clicking on the messaging button. Thank you. Thank you, Nathan.
Screen, if you click on polls, on the icon that says polls, under the tab that says polls again, you will see V1 of one CDS draft agenda. And if you click on the little arrow on the right side, then you will see vote 1. And you can click on yes, no, or abstain and submit your vote. If you encounter any problems, please let us know in the operators tab under messages by clicking on the messaging icon on the right side of your screen. Thank you very much.
Has everyone voted? Or do members still need a bit more time? In any case, Nathan, I will ask you to please announce the result of the vote once the voting has been concluded. I will ask colleagues to now please close this vote.
I don't see any messages under operators, so I take it that it is working for everyone.
Effectivement, je vois que nous manquons.
I see that 33 people have not voted. We're missing quite a large number of votes. Could we perhaps give 1 additional minute to members? So once again, you can vote by clicking on the polls button, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. You have 1 additional minute to vote.
We've closed this vote already, so unfortunately there is no way to vote at this point. But what we will do, I can see in the operator's message box, and sorry for this, we're learning at the same time. It's the first time that we're using this in the CDS. I can see that there are at least two members who are not able to vote, Mr. Tilva and Madam Sanchez. We are going to try to fix this with you in the background, and we will have another vote on documents in just a minute. So that will be another opportunity to try again and see if we can make this work. So maybe we can proceed to the second vote, and we will see then if we can fix these problems. Thank you.
Parfait. Et de toute façon,
Fine, thank you. And I see that the result is positive and there were no votes against the draft agenda. The draft agenda is therefore adopted. We now move on to the adoption of the summaries of the previous meetings of the Committee on the Civil Dimension of Security. There's firstly the meeting held in London on October 12th and 13th, 2019. Then the online meeting of July 1st, 2020, as well as the online meeting of September 9th, 2020. We therefore will now move on to adopting those 3 meeting summaries. Do members have any changes to propose for those summaries? Are there any requests for the floor? Any requests to amend the meeting summaries? That does not appear to be the case. And since that is not the case, we will now move on to a vote on these 3 documents. Could I again request that members click on the poll button on the right-hand side of your screen? Please vote for, against, or abstention.
Start the polls. Oh, I think it's been started right now. Okay.
Oui, ce
So
n'est pas encore
if members
affiché.
face any
Voilà, ça y est.
difficulties, please let us know again in the operator's box. But it could be for some of you at least that you've logged in with a different email address than the email address that was provided to us by your Secretary of Delegation. If that is the case, then please make sure that you leave the meeting and come back in with the email address that was provided to us, because that might be the reason why you're not able or eligible to vote at the moment. Thank you very much.
Vous disposez donc d'1 minute pour voter.
You have 1 minute for the vote, and normally you should see a timer on the bottom of your screen. I don't see it on my screen, but in any case, please proceed with the vote. Now I do see the timer, but it's on the top of the screen and not on the bottom. You have 1 minute for the vote. Ten seconds left. Has everyone voted? I hope so. We will now close this vote. And the results will now be published. Nathan, could I ask you to announce the results, please? I will do so in a few seconds once my colleagues have closed the vote. And as soon as the results appear, the results are now appearing. The summaries are adopted.
Parfait. Merci.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We now move on to consideration of the comments of the NATO Secretary General, Chairman of the North Atlantic Council, on the policy recommendations adopted last year by our Assembly. Are there any comments on this document? That doesn't appear to be the case. I do not see any requests for the floor. So if that is not the case, we will now move on to a consideration of our first revised draft report. Dear colleagues, we therefore are moving on to the next item, which is the revised draft report of our committee on China and the Global Liberal Order. Without further ado, I give the floor to Lord Joplin for presenting his draft report. You have the floor, dear colleague.
Sorry, Lord Joplin, we cannot hear
Oui.
you at the moment. Can you turn on your microphone?
Il faudrait.
Can you hear me
Oui,
now?
c'est parfait.
Good.
Merci
Sorry.
beaucoup. C'est
I
parfait.
couldn't.
Et là,
I had a press meeting to get back to be able to look at you, Senator. Thank you. I will begin, and perhaps I can begin by expressing my greetings to old friends and new friends. And I'm just sad that we can't all meet together in the beautiful city of Athens. It's, of course, a unique way of presenting a report to the committee. I've presented a number of reports over the years, but it's the first time I've ever done one like this. And let us hope that these vaccines come to be more and more available in the weeks and months ahead, so that next year we can meet in a more personal way. I want to begin, um, um, Madam President, by saying how grateful I am, particularly to Nathan, who has done so much work in presenting this
absolument.
report on China. We were sad to lose Andreas, who was hugely efficient. And all I can say is that Nathan has admirably filled Andreas's shoes, and I'm particularly grateful to him for that. And I hope also that the arrangements, which I think are miraculous for this meeting, which Roxandra and the team have put together, and I hope that, I don't know if she's watching this, but if she is, Roxandra, thank you for everything that you've done. Now, I come to my report, and you remember we did discuss this in September when we had another virtual meeting. And the fact is that China's place in the world has been changing drastically over the last year or so. And there is always the problem with a report like this, that it's out of date when it first appears. But we've done our utmost to try to keep it up to date. And I will come to later to some of the changes that we've made. Now, NATO, as we know, is an alliance based on common values, the value of democracy, of freedom, and of the rule of law. These values form the foundations of the global liberal order. And today, this order faces new challenges and new threats. Many of them are posed by China. And as I referred to a second ago, Beijing's recent activities demonstrate that it does not intend to abide wholly by those liberal norms which bring all of us so closely together. Hong Kong, of course, is a case in point. As I spoke in September, in June, the Chinese authorities imposed a new security law in Hong Kong, which was contrary to the original arrangements when Hong Kong, or the island of Hong Kong, was handed back to China. That new security law erodes the freedom of speech. It subordinates some judiciary and executive functions to mainland China as oversight, and thus undermines the rule of law. Since it has been adopted, this law has been used as a justification for the arrest of a number of pro-democracy and opposition activists. There have always been pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong, but they've never ever, even under the Chinese administration or the earlier British one, been treated like this. Now, these are not standalone actions. China's efforts to undermine the global liberal order are, in fact, systematic. This is particularly evident in China's approach to multilateral institutions. Beijing has joined existing multilateral structures, and it uses its membership there to question their liberal foundations. At the same time, it has established alternative multilateral structures which promote principles that are more in line with their views, which are alien to many of ours. Now, at the domestic level, China's political institutions are not compatible with the liberal norms I spoke about earlier. The situation has further worsened after President Xi Jinping rose to power in 2012. Since then, he's consolidated his power, he's built a personality cult and asserted the Chinese Communist Party's control over all political institutions, over the military, and over Chinese society at large. This institutional lack of respect for liberal principles has come hand in hand with a deterioration of the human rights situation in the country. The authorities severely restrict freedoms of expression, of religion, of belief, of assembly, and of association. As I previously mentioned, they are cracking down on democratic aspirations in Hong Kong. In the northwest region of Xinjiang, the Uyghur Muslim population and other religious and ethnic minorities face systematic repression and abuses. More broadly, the extensive internet censorship system that allows them to mute or even to silence criticism at home and abroad. Turning now to Beijing's handling of the COVID-19 crisis, this has demonstrated the risks posed by this rejection of liberal values. By restricting free speech, by silencing whistleblowers and concealing information about the spread of the virus, the Chinese authorities not only caused a delay in their own response to the crisis, but also in that of other states. In turn, this contributed to aggravating the pandemic pole of suffering and death. Moreover, during this crisis, Beijing has resorted to misinformation and propaganda to shift the blame, undermine democratic principles, and promote its authoritarian governance model. Finally, Beijing has exploited the global uncertainty created by the pandemic to advance its interests in its own neighborhood in Asia. To my colleagues, I want to thank you for all the most valuable comments that you made and shared with us during our meeting in September, and on writing as well as at the meeting. And I'd now like briefly to highlight 3 main points that we have added to the report in response to your suggestions. First, the revised report highlights the risks posed to our security, our independence and resilience by Chinese investments in critical infrastructure and strategic sectors. There's ample room for increased coordination between the allies in this area. Second, that we've done is I put additional emphasis in the report on Beijing's repression of ethnic and religious minorities. In particular, it now refers to the establishment of a tribunal in the United Kingdom, which will rule on whether systemic human rights abuses against the Uyghur community constitutes genocide. The report also discusses the situation of Roman Catholics in China. And third, the revised report draws attention to the issue of Chinese influence on the education sector in NATO member states. Allied countries are the primary destination for Chinese students, and their presence is increasingly linked to allegations of espionage and undue influence. Moreover, the report examines the ambiguous role played by Chinese culture and language institutes known as Confucius Institutes. Now, I ask the question, how can we, as NATO, as allies and as liberal societies, build a coherent approach towards the challenges posed by China to the liberal order, many of those challenges having arisen over the recent past? We must overcome our occasional differences when dealing with China to protect and promote the values on which our alliance is based. Speaking with one voice is indeed crucial to denounce those of Beijing's actions that are unacceptable and incompatible to liberal norms. To do so, we must also step up cooperation and coordination with like-minded countries and organizations. As part of NATO 2030 the 2030 reflection process, the NATO Secretary General has identified China as one of three factors, together with the pandemic and the threat of global terrorism, which should encourage NATO to adopt a more global approach. And finally, Madam President, finally, and this is very important, at the same time, we should refrain from rejecting and excluding China entirely. Cooperation with Beijing on common security threats would benefit both China and the alliance. We must therefore collectively engage with China where possible to resolve disagreements without compromising our liberal values. These are great challenges, but Madam President, they are vitally important. Thank you for your attention.
Merci infiniment, Monsieur le rapporteur spécial, cher Michael, pour cette.
Thank you very much, dear Michael, for this excellent report and your excellent presentation. You have raised quite a lot of issues that we need to discuss in greater detail, and I believe your report is quite remarkable. Its previous draft back in September was already quite commendable, and it has improved still. I don't know whether there are any questions or anyone asking for the floor. If you would like to take the floor, please sign up in the messages section to the right of your screen. I can see our friend and colleague from Romania, Angel Tilvar, would like to take the floor. Would like to ask a question. You have the floor.
Thank you. Congratulations, Lord Joplin, for your excellent report. Thank you for what you brought in front of the committee. And I would like to ask a question. You started your intervention saying a few words about the first of all, wishing us to be healthy. Thank you very much for this. And you were discussing in terms and in the context of the pandemic of COVID-19. How do you think that this pandemic situation will affect the let's say the way that we can deal with? I'm speaking in terms of NATO approach to the situation. How do you think that we can expect from China if the COVID pandemic doesn't end until the beginning of the next summer? If you have in mind such a possibility, and now you being an expert in this subject, I would like to know your opinion. Thank you very much.
Merci, Angel. Michael, est-ce que vous voulez bien?
Thank you very much, Angel. Lord Joplin, would you like to reply to this question?
And remarks, Angel. I appreciate that very much. You asked my comments on the pandemic. Well, there have been so many extraordinary stories running around about who did what and who didn't do something else. That and I remember our colleague Carol Gallant from Canada did distribute among us a whole lot of suggestions about what the Chinese had been doing in research laboratories in China, in Canada, I beg your pardon. Now, I don't know whether they were entirely on the ball, but I think once all this is over, we're going to need to have a major international inquiry into what went on and what didn't go on and what could be avoided and who and might have done things which were wrong and wicked. And my view is that rather than um, rather than firing shots at what went on in research laboratories in Wuhan, I don't think with the position of China and their love of covering up, I don't think we'll find out very much now. But I think we ought to have a worldwide, maybe United Nations inquiry, and then we shall be able to make proper comments on the pandemic.
Merci beaucoup, Michael, pour cette réponse.
Thank you very much, Michael, for this answer. I see no other requests on my screen at present, so I will abuse my position to ask a question that I have asked on several occasions, that I asked just a couple of hours ago to the Greek Minister of Foreign Affairs. I know it's a tough question because in terms of international business and strategy and international affairs, and our Western democracies all recognize the principle of one China. But I think that Taiwan, when it comes to COVID-19, has done a wonderful job. 7 fatalities in a country of 24 million inhabitants. Well, maybe there's inspiration to be drawn from what has been done in Taiwan, or more generally in a number of Asian countries that have scored very low death tolls. Taiwan would like to rejoin the WTO, WHO, sorry, at least as an observer member. And I think we should try and convince China to allow Taiwan to join the WHO again. Because, well, Taiwan used to be an observer member of the WHO, but it was excluded when the new Taiwanese president was elected. And if Taiwan had been a member, even an observer member of the WHO at the time the pandemic started, we could have saved quite a number of lives. I'm sorry to be controversial, but I'd like to have your opinion on that, dear Michael.
Yeah. I think here again, you quote the extraordinary figures of the small number of deaths in Taiwan from the pandemic. And that clearly, I think, would be something for the inquiry I spoke about in response to Angel Tilvar a few moments ago. It would be, there are other parts, we don't know, China tell us they have had very few deaths. I think hard to believe that they are as few as they say, but time will tell. And I think the inquiry ought to do everything possible to dig down, to find out what went on in China and the rest of the world because we can get more of these types of pandemic, the very nasty versions of flu can cause situations rather similar to the one with the COVID-19 has caused us. Now, whether Taiwan should join World Health Organization, I would certainly like to see that. But the mood in China at the moment, my guess is they would not only veto it, but that they would get some of their friends around the world
Absolutely.
to support vetoing it, because one of the factors which appears in the report, which I didn't mention in my address this afternoon, is that with all their investments here, there, and everywhere, they have really bought influence as well as creating creating facilities of one sort or another. And these are people who don't like getting up and making critical remarks about China because they are rather in hoc. I don't know if the interpreters know that phrase. They're in debt to the Chinese to very large extent in many cases.
Merci Michael. Je vois qu'il y a une autre demande d'un.
Thank you, Michael. I see another colleague would like to take the floor, Mr. Foludakis. You have the floor, dear colleague.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Lord Joplin, for an exceptional report on China. It was really enlightening, and I think it encompasses the whole lot that it should encompass. We would really wish to see a China that would abide by the rules and values of a liberal world order. Of course, no one can really tell whether this is possible, but we should, as you say, try to exert as much pressure as possible towards this end. And I would like particularly to comment and actually agree on one of your concluding points and remarks on what you just said, that whatever we do, it should not lead to rejecting and excluding China from our effort for a world order with stability, peace, and prosperity. Now, I'd like to ask you a question, Lord Joplin, on the basis of your research. China, among other exports, it's exporting nuclear technology, and actually, it's investing as well in nuclear power plants abroad, and plans to invest even more. We have been reading reports about a nuclear plant in Turkey that's under discussion with Chinese financing and Chinese technology. I'd like to ask you whether there is any clear view on possible threats being posed by this export of Chinese nuclear technology, in the sense of it being either formally or informally linked to nuclear weapons, and whether this technology, these exports of nuclear technology, could be used to produce uranium that could be used in nuclear arms, and whether there are ways to monitor this activity of China and its expansion worldwide. Thank you very much.
Michael, la parole est à vous.
Thank you. That's interesting. The fact is that China has become technically very, very professional indeed. I can remember going to China when I was a member of the British government and taking a trade delegation over there where the Chinese were keen to have us because what they wanted was maybe not quite so much to buy our products, but to find out the technology behind those products. And this is tied up with the point I made about students who seem to be encouraged to find out as much detail as they possibly can about technology and other issues. Now, I am not a expert on nuclear reactors. I have a science degree, but I'm afraid that I'm so old that it was all long before. It was long before all these things became used and became commonplace and understood. I have always understood that the encouragement of nuclear power is not, in fact, closely, it may be loosely, but certainly not closely tied in with the production of nuclear weapons. Of course, as you will remember, in Iran, they always claimed that their nuclear processes were tied purely to the production of power, whereas the I always have to get this right. The AEANA, is that right? The International Atomic Energy Inquiry, the outfit which we have as a committee visited in Vienna. What's it called? The IEAEA, isn't that it? Institute of
Atomic
Nathan,
Energy.
help
Yeah.
us. Anyway, you know what I'm talking
Yes, the
about.
IAEA.
They, I mean, there clearly is a connection, but between nuclear power and nuclear weapons. But I think it can certainly be monitored, and we'll know what they're up to, because the IAEA, they did know exactly, or pretty well exactly, what was going on in Iran, and were able to demonstrate that in their case, that they were surreptitiously thinking of developing nuclear weapons.
Merci beaucoup, cher Michael. Je vois qu'un dernier.
Dear Michael, thank you very much. I see there's one last request for the floor. Alexander Kirstein. Now, we're already over our allotted time, so may I ask Alexander's to be extremely brief. Many thanks and apologies for this, but we are short of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very short question. I have I have a question about links between North Korea textile industry and China, because China produce Western brands. For example, Hugo Boss suits and other brands using slave labors in North Korea, and resells these products, fashions to Western countries. What do you mean about such situation? Do you need implement some boycott for these Western companies or no? Thank you very much.
Michael, c'est à vous.
Michael.
Ah, on ne vous entend pas.
I'm sorry, you're muted.
I think I'm on now, aren't
Très
I?
bien.
Yes.
Parfait.
Right. I'm afraid I found your comments rather blurred, and I'm not sure that I fully understood what you were saying. I didn't hear it properly, although I've got I've got a headphone. Could you come back again, Alexander?
Alexander, I wonder if you could just repeat your question for Lord Joplin.
So Kirsten, if you could request the floor again and ask your question, please.
We've lost him.
Oui, oui, j'en ai peur. Bon, écoutez, peut-être que... Est-ce qu'il réapparaît?
Yes.
Oui,
He's
très
back.
bien.
There he is.
Alexander.
Excuse me. My question was about links between Chinese textile industry and North Korea slave labor camps, because we had seen movie about this problem. China produce Western brands, for example, suits of Hugo Boss, using slave labor in North Korea, and then resells with Chinese brands to Western countries, these products.
Thank you. I understand entirely.
Merci. Merci, Alexander. Michael.
I understand. Thank you, Alexander. I'm sorry about that. Well, I wasn't aware that the Chinese were using slave labor in North Korea, although we did go to South Korea not very long ago. But I'm not a bit surprised to hear it. But of course, the Chinese have been accused over a long time of pirating brands, whether it's on shoes or whatever, handbags, or all sorts of products which they put a bogus label onto. And they seem as though it has been very, very difficult indeed to persuade them or even prosecute them, because they claim that they, again, it's an example of they're not playing a part in the rule of law, which we all abide by. And I think this issue of brands is a really good point. And I don't think we've got it in anything on the report about it. But it certainly is a big issue, which has been with us for a long time.
Merci beaucoup, Michael. Merci à tous les intervenants. Nous allons passer.
Many thanks, Michael, and many thanks to all for all interventions. We're going to now vote on Lord Joplin's report. So you go to your poll tab on the right of your screen, I believe, and if you will, then you vote. You click on V3, it's the third vote, and you can vote either in favor, against, or abstention. And I will give you 1 minute, and you can see that little clock appearing top of your screen.
Pour
because of technical
voter,
difficulties.
n'hésitez pas.
You have 1 minute or just 40 seconds now, and please let us know.
Have technical difficulties to vote, you can also indicate your vote if you're willing to do so in the participants chat box. Or if you prefer, you can send an email to vote@nato-pa.int. And your vote will be taken into account. But hopefully, most of the issues that we encountered in the previous votes should be by now fixed. Thank you.
Donc, il vous reste 10 secondes.
You have now 10 seconds, no pressure. Three seconds and counting, and we have liftoff. Let's see the result. And many thanks to the NPA staff.
Et Nathan nous les annoncera.
Nathan will give us results.
But there's a bit of a delay on the website.
J'imagine qu'étant donné la qualité du rapport, il n'y a pas de grand suspense quant à son adoption.
Given the quality of the report, I'm sure there'll be no doubt as to its adoption, but so Nathan will be giving us the results now.
Adopted unanimously. Congratulations.
Magnifique. Félicitations, cher Michael, pour cet excellent rapport. Dommage que nous...
Magnificent. Well done, dear Michael. It's a great pity we can't all stand up and clap from where we are.
Améliorer la pédagogie et la communication à propos de l'OTAN, qui est présenté par notre collègue.
Now, we now have Angel Tilva who'd like to present his report. Dear colleagues, I think that we're all here, and I believe Angel is there. Dear Angel, I'll give you the floor.
Just 1 second. Just 1 second.
Angel Tilvar is now on screen. We can see you. Magnificent. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joel, and thank you everybody for this extraordinary and interesting meeting we have this evening. I would like to deliver a few remarks on a revised draft report we discussed. So I will start by saying that our alliance plays a crucial role in ensuring the security and stability of the Euro-Atlantic area. Yet, poor knowledge and understanding about NATO and its missions remain widespread among the public. Unfortunately, this has a negative impact on our citizens' support for the alliance. Effective communication is therefore critical to its success. NATO and its member states have made significant efforts to ensure that the public receives unbiased, clear, and relevant information about the alliance's role in today's world. However, much more can and should be done to enhance information and education about the alliance and, ultimately, to ensure support for NATO. This is particularly true today in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Russia and China, along with other state and non-state actors, are deliberately creating and disseminating false messages. Some of these messages are directly aimed at the alliance. They seek to create divisions within and between NATO member states and to undermine people's trust in allied institutions and in their response to crisis. For that reason, dear colleagues, countering disinformation is crucial for NATO. It must debunk malicious, harmful, and deceitful narratives aimed at the alliance. At the same time, it must also intensify its efforts to better inform and educate the public about its critical role, both in the response to the ongoing crisis, but also, more broadly, in today's complex and volatile world. During the COVID-19 pandemic, NATO has adopted an action plan on countering disinformation. This plan is based on two main approaches. First, the organization has increased its ability to understand the new informational environment created by the pandemic by monitoring and analyzing disinformation and propaganda messages disseminated but by hostile actors. Second, it uses this analysis to engage in a more targeted manner with the public. This allows NATO to reinforce the strategic impact of its communications. Concurrently, it has strengthened the coordination of its efforts to counter propaganda and disinformation with other organizations, including the G7, the United Nations, and the European Union. By speaking with one voice, NATO and its partners amplify their message and reach out to a larger audience. Overall, through these efforts, NATO has enhanced its ability to respond to the new informational environment. This is a positive result, but more can should be done. In no circumstances should the alliance let its adversaries control the informational narrative. And there and here, when I say the alliance, I do not just mean NATO. Raising awareness and understanding about NATO among the public is not a task that lies only with NATO itself. Member states play a crucial role in these efforts. As described in the report, some have developed innovative measures to reach out to a wider audience about the benefits of NATO membership and the role of the alliance. I urge member states and partner countries to share these initiatives and best practices with each other so that they can replicate it where and when possible. The NATO Parliamentary Assembly is another key actor in this area, and I'm very proud of it. One of its core missions is to foster better understanding of the alliance's objectives and missions among parliamentarians, as well as more broadly among citizens of, of allies. And we, as parliamentarians, have to participate in this effort as well. Thanks to our direct interaction with our constituents, we are uniquely placed to reach out to the public whenever we find it necessary. In our last online meeting, some of you, and I want to thank you for this, recommended visiting schools and universities to discuss with tomorrow's leaders the importance of the alliance and the transatlantic relationship. I can only agree with this excellent suggestion. We should play our part wherever possible to reach out to the younger generations. I would now like, dear colleagues, to take a moment to present some of the changes I made to the report since our last committee meeting in September. The feedback you provided me with greatly helped me while revising the report, and I thank you all again for your contributions. In paragraph 12, as suggested by the Latvian delegation, we clarify the status of NATO Strategic Communication Center of Excellence as a separate entity from NATO supporting the alliance's operations and activities. Additionally, we made some more corrections on the information provided in the report on strategic communications in paragraph 20. Further, in paragraph 23, as suggested by Mr. Chris Peters, the head of the European Parliament's delegation to NATO Parliamentary Assembly, we have added additional information on the cooperation between NATO Parliamentary Assembly and the European Parliament. In paragraph 26, we have added information received from the Latvian delegation regarding measures taken by the Latvian Ministry of Education and Science to enhance education about NATO for youth and students. Further, in the Ukraine case study, as suggested by our Latvian colleagues, we have mentioned in paragraph 42 and 43 the initiative taken by NATO and Ukraine to establish the joint platform on countering hybrid warfare, and we have added more information on the cooperation between NATO Parliamentary Assembly and Ukraine, which we consider to be of high importance. Speaking of Ukraine, I would like to express my appreciation for their contribution, which we received 2 days ago. Yet, I think that ideas from their suggestions are present in the report. However, as you suggested, I add some more information about the impact of disinformation and propaganda, particularly from Russia, on the perception of NATO amongst citizens of member and partners countries. I will reiterate the need for NATO to further increase cooperation with partner countries in this field. For your information, disinformation and propaganda pose a major threat to our societies and should be the topic of a committee's special report next year, if I may suggest. Our president, Joel, thank you, suggested in September that establishment of a common official day in all NATO countries dedicated to the alliance and its achievements to contribute to increasing awareness about NATO among the public, particularly among young generations. This suggestion has been added in paragraph 59, along with the existing examples of Lithuania and Romania. Following up on the intervention of John Shimkus from USA, in paragraph 60, we reiterated the importance um, for parliamentarians to reach out to the youth about NATO and transatlantic relations. In the concluding paragraph, we have highlighted the importance of adapting NATO's public diplomacy narrative to the new challenges that allies are facing today, as suggested by our Secretary General, Ms. Ruxandra Popa. Reaching out of the next generation of citizens and leaders is indeed crucial to ensure support for the alliance in the future. NATO simulations and essays competitions for students and young professionals. It has also significantly invested in new methods of engagement, such as social media campaigns and online events. Similarly, the NATO Parliamentary Assembly has long striven to reach out to youth. As you are aware, the former working group on education and communication about NATO, of which I had the pleasure of being a member, offered a set of concrete recommendations on improving education about NATO and better reaching out to youth. In addition, as Assembly members, we regularly engage with students and members and partner countries. Before I conclude, dear colleagues, I would like to highlight a final point. Today, the alliance faces many threats, such as the rise of China, the growing dissemination of propaganda and disinformation, climate change, and the COVID-19 pandemic, among others. NATO is adapting to these new challenges, and so should its public diplomacy narrative. To ensure further future support for the alliance, NATO must better explain to the public why and how its role is evolving in reaction to these menaces and how it intends to respond to future threats. Thank you very much. And before paying attention to your maybe questions, I would like to
Merci.
thank Joel. I would like to thank Lusandra, Nathan, and my good collaborator Dan Okenato. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, cher.
Thank you very much, dear Angel, for this excellent report. We know that you are currently running for Senate in Romania, so we wish you all the best for that election. Now, in terms of the questions, we will collect the questions. We already have one question from Ludmila Bunister, our Ukrainian colleague. And if you have any other questions, please ask them quickly because we're quite behind schedule. Ludmila, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Je vais parler.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I will be speaking in English because our chained recommendation to the report was made in English. It might be easier for me.
Our colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank all the team of the NATO PA for organizing this event and for continuing to work in such challenging environment that we're all getting used to with the new challenges that the modern world is facing and all of us are facing with the pandemic of COVID-19. And using this opportunity, I would like to wish health to everyone, first of all, as this is what is really, really needed at the moment. I also would like to thank our Romanian colleague for the presentation of the report, Mr. Tilvar. I really appreciate also considering our amendments that I clearly understand came quite late to your attention. So I would like just to highlight a few crucial points that our delegation would like to make at this stage, and I hope that our further cooperation and dialogue are going to be reflective of also all the threats that we are now seeing that the modern world brings before us as NATO allies and partners in a broader sense. Currently, this 21st century brought us two main threats or risks. The first being the COVID-19 pandemic, and the second, we see that on the in parallel with the COVID pandemic, the hybrid threats and hybrid attacks have intensified and are currently seen in various fields. If we are looking at the Eastern European countries, especially Ukraine, we are currently the foremost of all the tests of hybrid weapons on us, starting with the media space and disinformation campaigns, and following the attacks on the energy system of Ukraine, and even certain attacks on the constitutional regime. And we, like no one else, can experience it on a daily basis, especially those of us in politics. We are fighting every day basically against those external threats that are basically the only cause of those threats or aim of those threats is to destabilize the situation, which is the easiest thing always to do. It's much easier to break than to build. So at that, I first of all thank you for considering our position, to highlighting that our country is under such an attack from Russia, and we really appreciate that our partners from NATO countries appreciate the pressure we're under, and we are always happy to work with you and have a dialogue and also share our experiences, as they can be valuable for other NATO countries as well. And I really hope that the Enhanced Opportunity Program that we started last year will help us to broaden our cooperation with hybrid threats, and will finally allow us to have a much broader narrative inside the country, also regarding the role of NATO and the peacemaking, first of all, role of NATO, as we know that various Russian fueled disinformation campaigns basically are trying to induce fear in our population that NATO can bring us closer on the verge of war. So at that, I really hope that we will continue this dialogue and this cooperation. We also are establishing a center for hybrid threats here in Ukraine, and together with the government of Ukraine to work on those issues on a more structured level. And we hope for further cooperation with our NATO allies in this respect. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, chère Ludmilla, pour ce témoignage.
Thank you very much, Ludmilla, for that information. Thank you for those comments. I'd like to ask Angel to provide a response now, if he would like to do so, because I see no further requests for the floor.
La parole est à vous, cher Angel.
You have the floor, Angel.
Thank you very much. I have more than answering. I would like to appreciate the interest for our colleagues from Ukraine towards the report. We received their comments and their suggestions, as I mentioned, and as my colleague from Ukraine underlined, they are present in the report, and we can't find a better way of working together than through this kind of activities, such as a report, because such a report implies the effort of everybody. Last time when we discussed in September, I was moved by the interest you showed towards the report and by the suggestions you've made, either on the spot or on a more elaborated one. I fully thought about them, and I included them in the report, as you may see in the document that is at your disposal. Of course, this is a continuous work, a continuous job. The international situation is in a permanent dynamic. The COVID pandemic and the abundance of fake news and of non-classical war is challenging, but I think that NATO is the best prepared alliance in the world to face these threats, and the parliamentary dimension of NATO in the Parliamentary Assembly of NATO plays a crucial role, in which was the main and first concern of our committee and of the report, which is raising awareness and making people more supportive towards one of the most efficient and defensive alliance in the world.
Merci beaucoup, cher Angel. Nous allons tout de suite.
Thank you very much, Angel. We will now move to the vote. As in the previous votes, you will have 1 minute to vote for the votes. If you wish to do so, I don't think there will be too many surprises. The timer has now appeared. We have 1 minute for the vote. Dear colleagues, once again, to vote, simply click on the polls icon. And then you click on the report and you can vote yes or no.
Are having trouble voting in polls, that you can always do it under messaging by indicating your vote if you wish to do so. Thank you very much.
Merci Nathan de l'avoir rappelé.
Thank you, Nathan, for that reminder. That's important. You have 30 seconds remaining to vote. "18 seconds, 14, 10, 2, and the vote is now closed. And we will now await the published results. Our committee director, Nathan, will then announce them.
For the results. And I can say that the report is adopted unanimously.
Magnifique. Félicitations, cher Angel, pour ce magnifique travail.
Magnificent. Thank you very much, and congratulations to Angel for the wonderful work. Dear colleagues, we have reached the end of this meeting. I would like to thank all of you for your participation, your contributions. The speaker also kindly thanks the interpreters for their excellent work. The committee chair also thanks Nathan and the MPA team for their support for this committee's session. Thank you very much for organizing this committee meeting in the annual session in very difficult circumstances. Thank you very much to all of you. We will meet again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Brussels time for the second part of the CDS meeting in order to examine 2 further draft reports. I wish all of you an excellent evening and see you tomorrow, dear colleagues and dear friends, and thank you once again.